Okay. Hey, so welcome. I are doing a series right now on similes of the Buddha. So tonight I'm going to do a couple on arrows. So my absolute favorite similes are the simile of the two arrows and then the holding technique, which I often do together. But the holding technique isn't the Buddhist simile, it's Thich Nhat Hanh's, but the two arrows is a simile from the Buddha. And then the other one, which I'm going to start with, is the poisoned arrow. And then there's another simile he gives of the handful of leaves, which gives the exact same message that he's trying to give with the simile of the poisoned arrow. So I'll do those two first, and then I'll come to my favorite sutta, which we've talked about many times, but we've never read to you the actual words of the Buddha. So I thought, after having heard about the similes of the arrows, the two arrows for years, it'd be nice for you to hear the actual words of the Buddha. So we'll start with the poisoned arrow, and it's quite hilarious, actually. It's really funny. The actions of this man. Yeah. Okay, so the first similes coming from the middle length sayings, the Majjhima Nikaya, and all of these suttas you can read on suttacentral.net. You can get access to all of these suttas. So this is sutta number 63, and it's called The Shorter Discourse to Malankya-Putta. So this was a monk, one of the Buddhist monks called Malankya-Putta. Thus have I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was living at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's park. Then, while the Venerable Malankya-Putta was alone in meditation, the following thought arose in his mind. These speculative views have been undeclared by the Blessed One, set aside and rejected by him, namely, the world is eternal or the world is not eternal. The world is finite or the world is infinite. The soul is the same as the body, and the soul is one thing and the body another. And after death, a Tathagata, which refers to a Buddha exists, or after death, a Tathagata does not exist. And after death, a Tathagata both exists and does not exist, or after death, a Tathagata neither exists nor does not exist. The Blessed One does not declare these to me, and I do not approve of that. I do not accept the fact that he does not declare these to me. So I shall go to the Blessed One and ask him the meaning of this. And if he should declare to me, say that he is not going to give me these answers, then I'm going to disrobe and return to the holy life. So there, return to lay life. So there. So he's on his high horse, he's got his nose in the air, and he marches off to see the Buddha. Then when it was evening, the Venerable Malankya-Putta rose from meditation and went to the Blessed One. After paying homage to him, he sat down at one side and told him, "Here, Venerable Sir, while I was alone in meditation, the following thought arose in my mind. These speculative views have been undeclared by the Blessed One. And if he does not declare them to me, then I will abandon the training and return to lay life. So there. So I'm going to leave out, there's a whole bunch of repetition I'm going to leave out. And then the Buddha says, now then, Malankaputta, did I ever say to you, come, Malankaputta, lead the holy life under me, and I will declare to you, the world is eternal, or after death, a Tathagata neither exists nor does not exist. So Malankaputta had to admit, no, Venerable Sir, you didn't say that to me. And then the Buddha says, did you ever tell me, I will lead the holy life under the Blessed One, and the Blessed One will declare to me the world is eternal, etc., etc. No, Venerable Sir. That being so, misguided man, who are you and what are you abandoning? If anyone should say thus, I will not lead the holy life under the Blessed One until the Blessed One declares to me the world is eternal or not eternal or finite or infinite, etc. He said they could keep asking those questions all their life, and then they'd end up dying and they'd never have it declared to them what was the answer. And now comes the simile. Suppose, Malankaputta, a man was wounded by an arrow, thickly smeared with poison, and his friends and companions, his kinsmen and relatives, brought a surgeon to treat him. This is the funny part. The man would say, I will not let the surgeon pull out this arrow until I know whether the man who wounded me was a noble, a Brahmin, or a merchant, or a worker. And he would say, I will not let the surgeon pull out this arrow until I know the name and clan of the man who wounded me, until I know whether the man who wounded me was tall or short or middle of height, until I know whether the man who wounded me was dark or brown or golden skinned, until I know whether the man who wounded me lives in such and such a village or town or city, or until I know whether the bow that wounded me was a long bow or a crossbow, or until I know whether the bowstring that wounded me was fiber or reed or sinew or hemp or bark, until I know whether the shaft that wounded me was wild or cultivated, until I know with what kind of feathers the shaft that wounded me was fitted, whether those of a crow or a hawk or a peacock or a stork, until I know what kind of sinew the shaft that wounded me was bound, whether that of an ox or a buffalo or a lion or a monkey, until I know what kind of arrow it was that wounded me, whether it was hoof-tipped or curved or barbed or calf-toothed or oleander. All this would still not be known by the man, and meanwhile he would die. So too, Malankaputta, if anyone should say thus, I will not lead the holy life under the Blessed One until the Blessed One declares to me the world is eternal or not eternal or infinite, etc. That would remain undeclared by the Tathagata, and meanwhile that person would die. Malankaputta, whether there is the view the world is eternal or not, or etc., there's still birth, there's still aging, there's still death, there's still sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair, the destruction of which I prescribe here and now. Therefore, Malankaputta, remember that I have left undeclared as undeclared, and remember that I have declared as declared. Why have I left that undeclared? Because it's unbeneficial. It does not belong to the fundamentals of the holy life. It does not lead to disenchantment, to dispassion, to cessation, to peace, to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to nibbana. This is why I have left it undeclared. And what have I declared? This is suffering, I have declared. This is the origin of suffering, I have declared. This is the cessation of suffering, I have declared. This is the way leading to the cessation of suffering, I have declared. Why have I declared that? It is because it is beneficial. It belongs to the fundamentals of the holy life. It leads to disenchantment, to dispassion, to cessation, to peace, to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to nibbana. That is why I have declared it. Therefore, Malankaputta, remember what I have left undeclared is undeclared, and remember what I have declared is declared. And then amazingly, Malankaputta had come with his nose in the air, with his threat to the Buddha, was actually pleased with what the Buddha said, was satisfied and delighted with the Blessed One's words. So now I'm just going to read you another shorter sutta that says the exact same thing. And it's from the Sanghamitta Nikaya, the linked discourses. And it's called the Simsapa Grove. So I actually looked up what is a Simsapa tree, and I've got a little video here showing us what a Simsapa tree is. So this is the beautiful flower of this tree. Trying to make it big. I tried, but I couldn't. Oh. Yeah. Short and sweet.
If you could pick some.
All right, we got something else going on there. Anyway, that was the Simsapa tree. So here's the next sutta.
Where does this tree live?
Well, the Buddha grew up in India, so I guess in India. I don't know where else in the world, but for sure in India. So on one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Kosambi in a Simsapa grove. Then the Blessed One took up a few Simsapa leaves in his hand and addressed the bhikkhus thus. What do you think, bhikkhus? Which is more numerous? These few Simsapa leaves that I have taken up in my hand, or those in the Simsapa grove overhead? Don't you love a teacher who asks simple questions? Venerable sir, the Simsapa leaves and the Blessed One has taken up his hands are few, but those in the Simsapa grove overhead are numerous. So too, bhikkhus, the things I have directly known but have not taught to you are numerous, while the things I have taught you are few. And why, bhikkhus, have I not taught these many things? Because they are unbeneficial, irrelevant to the fundamentals of the holy life, and do not lead to dispassion, to cessation, to peace, to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to nibbana. Therefore, I have not taught them. And what, bhikkhus, have I taught? I have taught, this is suffering. I have taught, this is the origin of suffering. I have taught, this is the cessation of suffering. I have taught, this is the way leading to the cessation of suffering. And why, bhikkhus, have I taught this? Because this is beneficial, relevant to the fundamentals of the holy life, and leads to dispassion, to cessation, to peace, to direct knowledge, to enlightenment, to nibbana. Therefore, I have taught this. Therefore, bhikkhus, an exertion should be made to understand this is suffering, etc. An exertion should be made to understand. And so this is the Four Noble Truths that we all know there is suffering in the world. And there's a cause for that, which is desire. And then the good news is that the Buddha has taught us a way to end this suffering. And that way is the Noble Eightfold Path. Okay. So any questions or comments on those before I go to the next one? And you may not be asking questions like, is the world finite or infinite or eternal or not eternal, but you may be finding yourself asking questions like, why did this happen to me? Or why did that person treat me this way or say this? And so we can get sort of lost or caught up sometimes in going, why? And sometimes there might be an obvious answer, something you can change in your life, but there's a lot of times we don't know, especially when it's coming from outside of us or from other people, we don't know. But even within ourselves, why did you get a certain illness, or why did something happen, or whatever? Because we can't just look back in our this lifetime. Our tendencies come from previous lifetimes, like many lifetimes. And so, unless you have psychic powers and can see into your past lives, we're not going to be able to get to the root of a lot of things. So you can waste a lot of time going, why, rather than just dealing with, okay, this is the reality. What am I going to do about it? How can I best handle this? Yes, Kelly.
So as a 2-year-old,
yes.
Why? What doing, Mama? Already. I'm not going to say you don't need to know. So I guess, like, would you just recommend finding a balance between that and, constantly trying to engage and narrate everything for her so she's understanding why we're doing certain things, and then, zipping it when she's in bed or something like.
Yeah, well, I'll defer to the mother here, the grandmother.
Yeah, you know what? I think that it depends on the context. So Kelly, if you if you have time, and if you have energy, then yeah, I think explaining in like 2-year-old type logic. And then other times if you're rushing and you need, you can then say, I can tell you later, or I can tell you later, or maybe not going to work with a 2-year-old, but it's, yeah, sometimes just really short and simple, as simple as you can get. I remember when I was younger, I had my brother's children. My brother's a few bit older. Anyway, I remember one time, all these questions. Finally, I said, because that's the rules of Christmas. It was about Christmas and why we're doing, so occasionally you just say, because mommy knows and mommy decided. Yeah, because sometimes that's true, right?
It's very interesting observing her through, like, me through her now. Like, I'm really getting it, and it's so, like, wild. It's like a direct mirror. Like, okay, let's breathe together. What is that? It's really cute. It changes the whole energy, and like it's beautiful. Thank you,
Lisa.
Sorry, yeah, so as I'm asking this why question, I can't help but my question is, why is there such this like desire to know, like to know the why?
We want to be in control. Yeah, probably helps us feel safer.
Mara. I saw her.
But the reality is that, often there's some things that maybe we can have some control over, but there's a lot of things we don't have control over.
We also, that's the particular culture that we live in. We're highly educated. And we've developed a lot of critical thinking, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there are times like if you're meditating and there's a lot of thinking, sometimes that's an indication that, oh, there's some emotion or that I'm not totally ready to be with. So I'm just staying up here thinking.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense from that perspective. Like as an adult, it almost that thinking, that wanting to know the why is like a distraction, really. Yeah, really taking me away from something else. But in the case of like a 2-year-old or 3-year-old, they're all of their whys. I guess that is also though from even just conditioning.
No, it's biology, right? Like
right, that's what I guess that's what
we're way on a tangent, but yeah, the brain before it's 6. I mean, what a child is piecing together the entire world. Yeah, their learning is totally different than later in life, like totally different. I mean, it's just astounding what they're learning. Children, when they're having their language explosion, are learning 6 words a day. Yeah, I mean, it's just, if you've had the opportunity to be around a child, it's
yeah. And rarely it's out of doubt for a child. Like what? From experience, like the kids are always asking, not out of doubt or criticism. Yeah. It's always out of
curiosity. Yeah, it's very beautiful. Yeah, very wholesome.
Question here.
I'm just finding those 2 questions very interesting. I guess one question that I often ask, that would help would be, what are the fundamentals that we should leave unknown so that we don't try to control our lives?
Yeah, that's a bit too vague for me to grasp.
Because I mean, of course, the child wants to understand their environment, and they don't know what are the environment and what's the big fundamentals. And even as an adult, sometimes it's hard to define, not just as a child.
Yeah. Well, I think, the poisoned arrow analogy was trying to say, he's got this arrow with poison, let's get it out and clean the wound, and not spend our time speculating, asking all kinds of whys. So in our adult life, we have to deal with the reality of the moment, and rather than speculating about how did it get to be this way, it's like what's facing us and what do we need to do.
Just acceptance. This the word. This is the word that keeps just coming. For me.
Yeah, there's a lot in the Buddha's teachings about speculative view. So things like, is the soul the same as the body, or what happens after death? All of these things are things that we can't. The Buddha is all about what you can experientially know for yourself, and the hub of that is around what is leading to suffering and complication and conflict in your life, and what is leading to ease and peace of mind and well-being, and just to follow that trajectory. So it's very experiential. And so we could sit here and talk about what happens after death till the cows come home. Actually, experientially right now, we don't know. I mean, if we become very, very, very skilled and advanced in our meditation, we actually do. But is that answering your question? The Buddha is talking about looking at the suffering in your life. Yeah.
So feeling and experiencing rather than just always trying to get an answer.
Yeah. And actually, if you're more and more with the feelings and the experience, the answers will come.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so now we'll move on to my fave, the 2 arrows.
It's like David Letterman, top 10.
So meditators, the uninstructed worldling feels a pleasant feeling, a painful feeling, and a neither pleasant nor painful feeling. So like a neutral feeling. But the instructed noble disciple also feels pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neutral feelings. Therefore, meditators, what is the distinction, the disparity, the difference between an uninstructed worldling and an instructed noble disciple? And the people the Buddha is talking to said, they basically say, well, you're our teacher. You tell us. Don't ask us, tell us. And the Buddha says, then listen and attend closely, meditators, and I will speak. Yes, Venerable Sir, they answered. Then the Blessed One said this, meditators, when the uninstructed worldling is being contacted by a painful feeling, they sorrow, grieve, lament, they weep, beating their chest, and become distraught. They feel 2 arrows, a bodily one and a mental one. Suppose they were to strike a man with an arrow, and they would strike him immediately afterwards with a second arrow, so that the man would feel a feeling caused by 2 arrows. So too, when the uninstructed worldling is being contacted by a painful feeling, he feels 2 feelings, a bodily one and a mental one. Being contacted by that same painful feeling, they harbor aversion towards it. When they harbor aversion towards the painful feeling, the underlying tendency to aversion towards painful feelings lies behind this. Being contacted by painful feeling, they seek delight in sensual pleasure. For what reason? Because the uninstructed worldling does not know of any escape from painful feeling other than sensual pleasure. When they seek delight in sensual pleasure, the underlying tendency to lust for pleasant feeling lies behind this. They do not understand as it really is the origin and the passing away, the gratification, the danger, and the escape in the case of these feelings. When they do not understand these things, the underlying tendency to ignorance in regard to these lies behind this. Meditators, when the instructed noble disciple is contacted by a painful feeling, they do not sorrow, grieve, or lament. They do not weep, beating their breast to become distraught. They feel one feeling, a bodily one, not a mental one. Suppose they were to strike a person with an arrow, but they would not strike them immediately afterwards with a second arrow, so that the person would feel a feeling caused by one arrow only. So too, when the instructed noble disciple is contacted by a painful feeling, they feel one feeling, a bodily one, not a mental one. Being contacted by that same painful feeling, they harbor no aversion towards it. Since they harbor no aversion towards the painful feeling, the underlying tendency to aversion towards painful feeling does not lie behind them. Being contacted by painful feeling, they do not seek delight in sensual pleasure. For what reason? Because the instructed noble disciple knows of an escape from painful feeling other than pleasant feeling. Since they do not seek delight in sensual pleasure, the underlying tendency for lust for pleasant feeling does not lie behind them. They understand as it really is the origin and the passing away, the gratification, the danger, and the escape in the case of these feelings. Sorry, the light's bad here. This, meditators, is the distinction, the disparity, the difference between the instructed noble disciple and the uninstructed worldling. And so the reason I like combining this with Thich Nhat Hanh's analogy of like the holding technique, which is an analogy of holding a hurt child. So when you're being struck by the first arrow, then you're the person hurting. You're like the hurt child. And then you want to hold yourself with love. You want to hold that feeling with love. Then that's one way this is one method, other than just distracting yourself with something else to deal with this feeling. Anyway, Aya asked me when we were at the retreat the other weekend, I told a story of when I had sort of an insight into the two arrows. Happened just in the foyer downstairs there. And this was about, I don't know, 25 years ago or so. But at that time in my life, whenever anything sort of bad happened to me, then I would do this weeping and wailing and beating my chest. And I'd tell at least, 10 different people, like, well, do you know what happened to me? This horrible thing, this person said this or did that. And I'd be wailing away, complaining, trying to get sympathy and, get support from my view of what happened. Anyway, so this was now about the second or third person. So in this particular occasion that I'm remembering down in the foyer there, something had happened to me. I can't remember what it was. And so this is about the third victim that I'm wailing to. So I remember standing there just going, wow, this happened or that happened. Wow, like poor me. And I remember I was in the middle of a sentence going, wow. And I thought, I just had this profound feeling of, this is boring. I've heard this before. And I actually, in mid-sentence, stopped my wailing and somehow changed the topic. Anyway, that was the end. Like, I just stopped after that, stabbing myself with that second arrow, because I just realized it's which just causing me more suffering. It wasn't helping at all. And then I think subsequent to that, I learned about the holding technique, and that was magical. I think the first time I used it, it took about 5 minutes. It was a feeling of anger that had happened. I did the holding technique and it dissipated. And I think now it takes like 15 or 30 seconds. I have a feeling, an unpleasant feeling. I hold it and it's like it's gone within 15 or 30 seconds, from practice. Took a few more minutes when I first did it. anyway, I would say that this concept of the 2 arrows and the holding technique has been one of the most valuable lessons I've learned from my lay life from the teachings of the Buddha. Okay, so those were the similes I was bringing. So I'll open it up again for discussion. Yes, Caleb.
What's your method for holding?
What does that look like? Yeah. So the analogy is, a child, falls down and hurts or whatever, and you scoop them up in your arm and you're just holding them so they feel your love. Just feel you supporting them. And in a few moments, they just wipe their tears and run off toddling again. So what you want to do is hold your attention on the pain. So you want to physically locate where that feeling is in your body. So this is the skillful way. You locate, is your jaw tight or your shoulders tight? Is it in your heart chakra, your solar plexus? Most people, it's in their heart or their solar plexus. But sometimes if you're really angry, it could be in your fists or your jaw or your shoulders. And then you put your attention there, like without words, you're just aware, and with love, like it's kind of like sitting down beside a friend and just having like, oh, it's just being with, not doing anything, just being with, being aware, but not being aware like when's this going to end or whatever. It's being there with a loving, caring, sort of compassionate feeling. And then you do not want to be in your head, because it's our head where we generate the second arrow. All those thoughts, like, why did they say that? Why did they do this? Why did this have to happen? Like, how long is this going to go on? I can't stand this. It's too horrible. Like, all of those thoughts are like logs of wood to a fire of that emotion, are just going to make it bigger and bigger and bigger. So you need to stay out of your head. And of course, out of habit energy, we're going to go into our head, but you just kind of want to go, hello, but I'm not speaking to you right now. I'm just down here. So just hello and goodbye, and back down to lovingly holding your attention on the feeling. And I mean, some pains are chronic, but even if it's a chronic pain, it's not like this. It goes in waves. So John Kabat-Zinn, in his mindfulness-based book that he wrote, he said you ride the wave, so you just hold it until it eases off enough that you can sort of put it into the background and carry on with life. And then when it rises again, then you can just pause what you're doing, ride the wave with the holding technique until it eases off again. And other things just dissipate. Yes.
Would this be the same as just allowing yourself to physically experience whatever the emotion is without adding thoughts to it?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And experiencing it with a sort of compassionate attitude, not a aversive attitude.
Yes, because a lot of our emotions are not the actual emotion.
Correct.
You're angry, but it's grief and hurt, right? But it manifests as anger when you add all of the cognitive layer to it.
Yeah.
So.
Yes.
Hello. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. I wanted to share something. I don't know if it fits perfectly, but for me, it's like I don't have anger that much. Usually I'm sad or disappointed or whatever. But what's really interesting, what I learned probably 1.5 or 2 years ago, I sometimes say, when people sometimes ask, how are you today? And I'm like, oh, I'm not too bad. I'm not really good today, but I'm just going home today and I have a healthy cry. So I call it a healthy cry, because I'm going home, then I don't know, sometimes I'm crying, which is really helping to let go like emotions where I just feel that like it's like a release what my body is doing, and then I can feel that I can also mentally let go. Yeah, so yeah, that was something I was thinking about when we were listening to it.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, when the tears want to come, you just, let them come and you're just with them, not adding anything. Yeah. Yeah. Very good. Sorry, I saw a hand. I can't remember if was it out here? Okay.
I guess it's more directly to the person who's talking about the cognitive part, or even to you with the brain part, is what's the benefit of letting the feeling, just kind of like not, like if you're grieving, of just like feeling the feeling and not letting the connection be made with the grieving.
What we're trying to do is like honor feelings, but not make them worse. This is the second arrow is making the feeling worse.
So not
It's yes, we don't want to make things worse, we don't want to make ourselves suffer more. Yeah. I mean, my biggest experience of this was when my husband died suddenly. And so I can't remember, it was maybe I can't remember if it was 6 months or a year. I can't remember. I would probably cry a little bit every day when I would see like a young couple holding hands. And I remember when we were young, or I'd see an old couple holding hands and I'd think we're never going to grow old together. And so I would just let the tears be there, but I would just hold my attention on the pain in my heart. But I wasn't thinking thoughts like, he's gone, I'll never see him again, my best friend's gone, we can't do this, we can't, I wasn't making it worse. I was just being with the grief feeling in my heart. And I cried for about 30 seconds and then it was over. And then I would carry on with my day. And that went on for a period of time and then just sort of ended. So,
which was the grieving by itself. You just didn't need to overthink it.
yeah, I didn't have to make myself more sad. Kelly.
I think for me with the second arrow, just like I just become exhausted. Like,
yeah.
Like, okay, like it is what it is, and that's what's brought me back to the path. Like, just live the path and be a good person, and whatever happens, happens. Like it's just draining, right? But that's the mind's trained, right? So you're up at 3 a.m. and I just keep on like thinking about skateboarding with Rhea, and I just keep on pulling it back like every 3 seconds, like and I think coming back it'll just train itself again, or not again, maybe for the first time, because I didn't have a chance to be a bad person this life. It's clearly coming from a lot of other lives. Like it happened right from a young age. So like, but now I could be creating more of the karma, right? I can't believe him. And then like, realize like, just like you, it's just like, I'm exhausted even trying to like explain to people because they're going to have a different perspective. We're going to ask a question and then I'm going to have, and it's like, they're never really going to understand the dynamic anyway. So it's just like, I think I just threw in the towel of exhaustion. Like I'm tired, okay, like I surrender just because I'm so tired of trying to fight it. Like
yeah.
That's just my experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that another way that we do the second arrow is the not constructive, the unhelpful critical self-talk that we often add, like I read this study very recently, and there's this phenomena in it. It's very strong, where people will make a decision, like a self-help type decision, like, okay, I'm going to start doing yoga every day, or something like this. And then if they miss one day, it's like, oh, the whole thing falls apart. And this is that second arrow of like, oh, I can't ever stick to anything. I can't, you know, really take care of we have all this self-talk. If we just miss one day or mess up in one way, instead of just, oh, I missed today, so I'm going to restart tomorrow. This is not typically what we do. So that second arrow is what is our response when something, you know, didn't go the way we had planned it, or you know, or some kind of curveball, you know, like we get the flu, and then instead of just like, oh, I got the flu, somehow our whole life, yeah, I can remember so many times just, and still things so much more difficult and complicated than they actually are. Yeah. So much of our meditation practice is literally learning how to actually be our very best friend to ourselves. Because often we know how to do that. We can be a really good friend to someone else, but not always such a good friend to ourselves in terms of being honest, being patient, being forgiving, etc., etc. Yeah.
Okay, if I missed anybody on Zoom with a question? Everybody's good? Okay. Well, we'll close. So we're first week of the month. So we'll close with metta, loving friendliness. May you be well. May you be happy. May you be peaceful. May you be loving. May you be calm. May you be safe. May no problems come to you. May no difficulties come to you. May no harm come to you. May you meet with spiritual success. May you have the patience, the strength, the courage, the determination, the inner clarity and the wisdom to meet and overcome the inevitable difficulties in life, to meet and overcome the inevitable problems in life, to meet and overcome the inevitable frustrations in life, and to meet and overcome the inevitable failures in life. May the whole of our hearts be filled with loving friendliness. May every cell in our bodies be filled with loving friendliness. May every level of our consciousness be purified by loving friendliness. May we build a healthy, happy aura of loving friendliness all around us, through which no evil thought, word, or intention, or any form of harm may penetrate, but from which loving friendliness may radiate in all directions. And may we be protected. May the merit of our practice be shared with all sentient beings, named and unnamed. Kelly, Lee, Lise, Blair, Simon. May all beings be well and happy. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Good night.
Good night.
Miss you.
Thank you so much. Good night.